Lions fans, welcome to the Molloy men's basketball preview video. I'm Rick Rissetto, joined now by the head coach of the Molloy men's basketball program in what has seemed like another year for you, because you've been here pretty much from the start of the program, Charlie Marquardt. It's another great season upcoming for Molloy, and let's talk a little bit about last year. Obviously, it was a great run. You had a lot of great talent on that team that's no longer with us. But speak about the graduated players, specifically Matt McLeod and Richard Zoller, because they not only put a dent on the program in terms of record book wise, but I'm sure in terms of spirit and leadership wise, the intangibles you can't put on a stat sheet.
Absolutely, Rick. It's a good point. Both four-year guys in our program, so both were captains for us in their last year, and everyone sees the accomplishments on the court, but I see the commitment off the court. I see them graduating. I see them doing well in their lives, and also being great teammates through their 4 years, and getting involved with the community here, whether it be SAC or just other committees. So really proud of them, of what they did here, and they left a mark on the players that come from behind as far as just how to act and how to behave as a Molloy student athlete.
Now, last year's team ended up being the 5 seed. There was a whole host of ties and tiebreakers. You ended up traveling to LIU Post for the conference quarterfinal. What about that season kind of maybe do you look at and say we could have done this, we could have done that, to host the playoff game instead of being that team that loses out the tiebreaker and has to go on the road for that quarterfinal?
No doubt. I mean, it's a slim margin. Came down to that last week, how we functioned, and if we had won one more game or things just played a little differently. I think Wesleyan had Post late, and wound up Post came back in that game, and that gave them the home seed against us. So, but we can't concern ourselves with what occurred. We had to win one more game, and we didn't. But, that's something to learn from for these returners that we have. And, you can look at it, it was a tie break for third, fourth, and fifth. So you can look at it going forward that we were really a third-place team. And hopefully we gain some experience and are ready this year.
You talk about those returners, and let's speak about that for a second, because at Hofstra University back in the early 2000s, there was an "in guards we trust" mentality with Lawrence Stokes, Antoine Agudio, Rick Apodaca. Those guys really did a great job in sort of leading that team to the promised land in what was then the America East. Now your returners, you've got Jalen Morris, Brandon Williams, Mo Gatson, and Charlie Marquardt, who may be more of a stretch forward, but at the same time kind of has a guard mentality. So what you have is almost, in a sense, an "in guards we trust" type of ideal. Now, when you look at the guys that you have coming back, what do you see out of them as they become seniors and juniors and those upperclassmen leaders?
I see a lot of experience in these guys. In those guys you mentioned, Brandon, Maurice, Charlie, Jalen. You think about guys that Brandon's really a 4-year high-experience guy. Maurice, a lot of minutes last year. Charlie and Jalen, their first 2 years, minutes. So I'm looking at experience. I'm looking at people that have produced in the past. We're going to have more guards on the court than bigs. I think we're going to try to promote that concept. So I don't think it's a bad comparison. I think the better job that they do is going to be clear, but I also think part of their success is going to be how good our one big is. Because when you have just one big on the court at one time, he's got to be really good. And so I'm really excited to see, Kevin Bowles, a senior, Chucks Obunse, another senior, in that same light, who have experience helping those guys and guiding them through, being that one big who can do things. And also, the younger guys, Shundi and Derek, helping in that manner. So yes, it's going to be an "in guards we trust," but at the same time, they're going to need their bigs to support them.
Let's look at those forwards, because we mentioned Rich Zoller. We didn't mention him, but he was still a big player for you. Miles Prendergast last year, and a 2-year star for you coming from Suffolk Community College. Now you look at this front court that you have coming in. You mentioned Chucks and Kevin. I want to focus on Shundi a little bit, because he's got that raw height that you can't teach at 6'9", 6'10". But as a freshman, you exposed him a little bit early, and it may not have worked out to the way you would want it to see. Now, as a sophomore with 1 year under his belt, how do you think he's going to react when he gets into those situations that he was in last year?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think just to level set it, Miles Prendergast was tremendous for us too last year. He had his best year his senior year, so I really add him to that conversation of of Rich and Matt and what a job he did, and he was actually added as a captain in the second part of last year. So all three of those guys were big parts of our success. As far as Shundy's concerned, it's a little different dynamic. We did a lot of zone last year. Also, at one time or another, early on in the year, some of the other bigs we felt could have given us a little different effect. And so we were looking to see what we had with Shundy. So it wasn't an expectation from Shundy more than let's see what he can do. Less pressure on him as the year went on, and our other bigs really sort of playing the way we expected him to. This year, same thing. We think he's going to add minutes and support Chucks and Kevin. But at the same time, it's not a pressured expectation from him. Like I said, we're going to probably do a little more man than zone this year. Zone for him was easier for him to play in. Man-to-man, a little bit more difficult. So I'm hopeful, like as the season wears on, a bigger growth will come from him.
Let's talk a little more about the rest of those underclassmen. You have Adrian Denner coming back as well as a sophomore, and then you have the newbies that are here: Chris O'Reilly, Derek Okunpoler, Mike Torrey, Curtis Jenkins, who has the explosive guard mentality that I think you like to see in the guards that you have. What do you expect from them as they're, turning a year older, getting a little more experience, or in the case of the freshmen and Curtis as well, stepping onto the court as a Molloy Lion for the first time?
Yeah, the freshmen. It's definitely a voyage, learning what it is to take success at this level to a personal level and for the team. And you got 4, I think, good recruits, and they might develop all in their own time. I think what we'll see is Curtis probably having a big impact up front, very talented with his defense, his rebounding, on all the unselfish areas. Does an excellent job in those, and he makes everyone better. So he's not going to come in and huge scoring mentality. We don't need that. But with all these little things, and we call him a glue guy, we feel similar to how Matt McLeod played. We feel that he's going to help us there. Mike Torrey, Chris O'Reilly, we feel they're going to help us from a scoring perspective. Going to take a little bit of time to learn those aspects of what it takes to score, but they're both skilled and they'll help us. Derek is a lunch pail type guy. He's going to help us inside. I feel that he's learning what it takes to work hard every day. Comes from a very good program, just like Mr. Torrey and our senior Kevin Bowles-Kellenberg. We really love that program. So we think we have an inside track of hard work from him, but we just want to bring him to the next level of producing at this level, which is, always a challenge.
Let's now fast forward and look at this conference slate. I'm going to get to St. Thomas Aquinas in a little bit, but Bridgeport obviously picked to be repeat champions. You know what they do. You know how they are. Every year they just restock. Then you look at teams like LIU Post and Damon, who's now eligible for the first time as a member of the ECC. Dowling was a surprise last year getting into the quarterfinals. And then you have, NYIT. They lost Darian Hooker, but they're still a very talented squad. This is going to be another fun year for this conference in that there's so many good teams out there and there could be so many surprises. So how do you keep your team in check with the expectations kind of where they are?
Yeah, we worry about ourselves because if we got caught up thinking about what everyone else has, and everyone else does have a lot, we would not have the mindset we need. So we worry about getting better in practice every day, working hard, improving where we need to from an individual and a team perspective. And then we'll accept any type of results that we get in games because we know this is going to be our voyage. Damon is now eligible for playoff play. So now you've got all 11 teams eligible for 6 spots. Not an easy task for anyone just to get in the playoffs. As you stated, there's good teams out there, and I couldn't agree more. The parity through 11 is really there, and you see that by the point differential in our conference game. So definitely a lot of work to do, and we're just going to really focus in-house on where we need to be.
Now, I know you're saying that you're focused on where you need to be, but let's be honest. Let's call it what it is. When you look at St. Thomas Aquinas and what they did. I know it was an exhibition, what they did to St. John's, beating a D1 program by 32 points. Even in an exhibition game, does that kind of stick in the back of your head as something that you look at saying this team could be very good? They were obviously top seed last year, and to beat a high-level D1 program like St. John's in an early season game, kind of does that give you an indication of how good they're going to be and how much fun that matchup is going to be for you later in the season?
It definitely turned our heads. We understand how good Stack is because they had a lot of returners. We're not surprised. We just really feel that this conference is excellent, just to the same point of the depth in our league. But they're very good. What happened that night, I don't know. I know St. John's had some guys sitting out. I know they got really good players, whether you go from Reyes all the way to their bigs, their guards. Chaz is preseason player of the year. So we have a lot of respect for them, and we know it's going to be a challenge. But we're looking forward to an opportunity. We're excited what they did to represent the conference. We think that's great for us and for the ECC. So Tobin did a great job getting them ready, and I'm happy for that team. I'm happy for that team because it definitely shows that Division II basketball is alive and well in New York.
The early portion of your schedule now, let's look into that. You start off at Saint Thomas Aquinas, of all places, in an opening tournament with St. Michael's and Saint Anselm. Now, aside from being the only team there that's not technically a Saint, looking at that, you have two very good Northeast 10 programs that you're going to be seeing in early season action. And then you run almost a gauntlet in that you have a third game in 3 days at Hofstra, a D2, D1 crossover. So your program has really loaded the docket of the season so far. What do you see in those opponents going in before the Hofstra game, and then what do you see for that game as well?
Well, we feel that it's so hard to get an at-large. We feel that playing the best competition, and then you have strength of schedule feeding into all that information and those calculations once they're done. We feel that we might as well play the teams that we need to get ready for our league play. And, it's finding that mix, that honest mix between getting games that you can feel you can really compete in and prepare you and also build confidence. Right. So it's a tough equation, but we went up to Stack last year. We had a great tournament. They did a great job hosting, and we wanted to go back. We just enjoyed that immensely. So we're looking forward to the challenge. We played St. Mike's. They're a little bit rebuilding. They lost some players. St. A's is perennially very good. Hofstra just sort of came upon us. Can't turn down an opportunity to play the local Division I school. And so we're excited about that. Coach Mahalik and his program speaks for itself, and I think they got a lot of returners, and they're going to be excellent this year. But we're excited about who we are, and we want to represent the college well, whether it be starting the season and the expectations, or playing a local Division I in a regular season game. That's exciting. Right. And talk about Stack, and that is exciting, and playing St. John's. But we have an opportunity in the regular season, so we're looking forward to that. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Last question, Coach, before we let you go. You've been doing this now for over 20 years. You're no stranger to the opening season butterflies. You're no stranger to that. And I'm sure you know as well as anybody, you could start off the year 3-0. You could start the year 0-3 going into that home opener against Caldwell that Thursday night. So what do you have to say to the your players? Because, as we said, you could start off 3-0 and everyone could be on their high, and then you lose the next 4. Sure. You can start off 0-3 and everyone's sunk, and then you lose the next 4 as well, and you're 0-7. Sure. So how do you keep the players' emotions in check for that next game, or the next game after that, or the next game after that, knowing that the results could be in your hands, could be out of your hands. There could be favors that were lost here and there. So how do you just keep it all in perspective and keep everybody in motion?
It's a good question. We consider it, and we use this term even in practice or games, emotional intelligence. Not to get too high, not to get too low. Don't get caught up in a run one way or another. It's a long season, and each game has equal importance, no more, no less. So it's it's tough, and I find it's probably one of the most important parts of coaching, is to keep them level-headed, to keep them improving, keep them supporting each other, to have each other's backs, for the coaches to have their back, and vice versa. We're all on the same side of the fence. So you're right. Things can start out average, great, below average. But we're going to put out a product that we're going to be proud of looking back with every game. Whether the results are there, we're just going to practice hard every day and really try to be a solid team every day. I wanted to mention that, and I just want to add one other thing. There's one player I didn't mention, Adrian Denner. And I really see improvement from him. Not sure what it's going to connect to on the court, but when I was mentioning some of the young guys, and also we talked and started about guards, I wanted to mention him in both lights, that he should be mentioned because he's a quality person and he's shown improvement. So I'm hopeful for him in addition to that rest of the group.
I think he should be mentioned also as the reigning slam dunk champion of Marine Madness, right?
That's right. He sort of set a tone here, so hopefully he continues.